Her parents were told she had lost her mind, but in reality, she was carrying the child of the judge's son, and he wanted to erase her. It was a suffocating Tuesday in July when Sarah realized her life, as she understood it, was over. The humidity in Oak Haven, Kentucky, was thick enough to chew on, clinging to her skin like a second, unwanted layer. She sat on the edge of the rusted bathtub in her family's home, the plastic stick in her hand confirming the terror that had been gnawing at her gut for weeks. 2 pink lines. In 1976, for a girl like Sarah, daughter of a deacon and a librarian, those 2 lines were a social death sentence. But it was not the shame of the town that made her hands tremble. It was the specific, terrifying weight of the father's last name, Turner. Caleb Turner was the golden boy of the county, the son of Judge Raymond Turner, a man whose gavel struck with the finality of God's own hand. Caleb was 18, bound for law school in the fall, carrying the dynasty on his shoulders. Sarah was 17, bound for community college and a life of quiet obedience. She met Caleb by the old stone bridge an hour later. The twilight was loud with cicadas, a drone that usually comforted her, but now sounded like a warning siren. Caleb looked like he always did. Khaki slacks pressed sharp, a polo shirt that smelled of expensive cologne and fear. When Sarah told him, the blood drained from his face so fast she thought he might faint into the muddy water below. "You see not tell them," Caleb whispered, his eyes darting to the road, terrified that his father's black Buick might materialize out of the dust. "My dad." "Sarah, he's up for the federal bench next year. A scandal like this? It would not just hurt him. It would kill him, and he'd de-kill me." "I see not hide a baby, Caleb," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "My father will throw me out. He'll drag me to church and make me confess in front of the congregation. I need you to help me." Caleb grabbed her hands. His grip was clammy. "I will. Promise. But we have to be smart. We have to be discreet." He laid out the plan. It was smooth, rehearsed, as if he had been thinking about this contingency since the first time they kissed. He told her about a private clinic in Ohio, a place for girls in trouble that his family knew about. He said she would go there, have the baby, and they would arrange a private adoption. He promised he would come for her after he settled into school in the autumn. He promised they would be together once the dust settled. "Trust me," he pleaded, squeezing her fingers until they hurt. "If you tell your parents, it's over. The town will tear you apart. My father will destroy your dad's business just out of spite. You know he will. But if you come with me, I can fix it. My family will take care of everything." Sarah looked at him. She saw the panic in his blue eyes, but she also saw the boy she loved. She thought of her father's belt hanging by the door, the suffocating silence of her mother's disappointment, and the whispers of the church ladies. Then she looked at Caleb, offering a lifeline. She made the choice that would cost her everything. "Okay," she breathed. "Take me away." The relief on Caleb's face was instantaneous, but there was something else there, too. A flicker of shadow, a shift in his jaw that she would not understand until it was far too late. He did not kiss her. He just checked his watch. "Pack a bag. Small. Meet me at the crossroads at midnight. Uncle Elias will drive you. It's better if I am not seen." That night, Sarah climbed out of her window with a duffel bag containing 2 dresses, a hairbrush, and a photo of her and Caleb. She left a note on her pillow, dictated by Caleb. "I need time. Am confused. Do not look for me." She walked to the crossroads under the heavy, oppressive moon, believing she was running toward salvation. When the long, dark sedan pulled up, she did not see a savior. She saw a hearse. The car ride was not to Ohio. It was a descent into a void. Uncle Elias, a man with a neck as thick as a tree stump and eyes like polished flint, did not speak a single word for 3 hours. He drove the back roads, the ones that did not appear on the gas station maps, winding deeper into the Appalachian foothills where the trees grew too close together and the sunlight struggled to reach the ground. Sarah asked questions at first. "Are we almost there? Is Caleb meeting us? Can we stop for water? But the silence from the driver's seat was a physical wall. Eventually, she stopped asking. They arrived just as the sun began to bleed over the horizon, casting a bruised purple light over the landscape. It was not a clinic. It was a farmhouse that looked like a dying animal, slumped against the side of a hill, miles from the nearest paved road. The wood was gray and splintered, the windows staring out like cataracts. "Get out!" Elias grunted. It was the first thing he had said. Sarah clutched her bag to her chest. "Where are we?" Caleb said. "Caleb, AI not here." The front door opened, and a woman stepped onto the porch. She was tall, gaunt, and wore a dress that looked like it belonged in the previous century. This was Aunt Margaret. She did not smile. She did not offer a greeting. She simply opened the screen door and waited. Sarah's instinct screamed at her to run. The cornfields stretched out endlessly in every direction, a prison of green stalks. But she had no car, no money, and she was 17 years old with a secret growing inside her. She walked up the steps and into the house. The trap clamped shut with the sound of a heavy deadbolt sliding into place. Life at the farmhouse was a slow, grinding erasure. There was no phone. There was no radio. The mailman did not come down the dirt driveway. Aunt Margaret was a warden in an apron. She fed Sarah 3 meals a day, starchy, flavorless sludge, and demanded total silence. "You are unwell," Margaret told her on the second day. When Sarah tried to demand answers, "The judge says you are suffering from hysteria. A breakdown. You need rest. You need quiet." "I am not sick," Sarah snapped, fear sharpening her voice. "I am pregnant, and Caleb knows it. When is he coming?" Margaret just looked at her, eyes void of empathy. "Caleb is a good boy with a bright future. He does not need distractions. He is handling his business. You handle yours." Weeks bled into months. Sarah's belly swelled, a physical clock marking the time she was losing. She tried to write letters to her parents, begging Margaret to mail them. Margaret took them, nodded, and later Sarah found them burning in the wood stove, the ink curling into ash. She realized then that her parents were not looking for her because they had been told a lie so convincing they would not dare question it. The Turners controlled the narrative. Sarah imagined her father, head bowed in shame, telling the neighbors that his daughter had gone away to heal her mind. She was a ghost in her own life. The isolation began to warp her reality. Sarah started talking to the dust motes dancing in the shafts of light. She paced the floorboards until she knew every creak by heart. The only thing that kept her sane was the anger. It started as a small spark but grew with every day of silence. Caleb had not sent her here to be safe. He had sent her here to be hidden. But she still clung to a shred of hope. "He's just scared," she told herself at night, shivering under a thin quilt. "He's waiting until the baby is born. He'll come for us then." That hope died on a Tuesday in November, for months into her captivity. Sarah had been feeling ill all day, a cramping in her lower back that made it hard to stand. She was lying on the cot in her room when she heard the crunch of gravel outside. It was a sound she had not heard since she arrived. A car. She dragged herself to the window, peering through the grime. A black Buick. It shone like a sleek beetle against the dirt. Her heart leaped. Caleb. But it was not Caleb who stepped out of the car. It was a man in a charcoal suit, holding a fedora. Judge Raymond Turner. He looked at the farmhouse with a sneer of distaste, dusting off his jacket before stepping onto the porch. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty window. She was not supposed to be seen. She crept to the door of her room, pressing her ear against the wood. Below, in the kitchen, voices drifted up through the floorboards. The voices were muffled at first, but the judge's baritone cut through the floor like a knife. "Complications?" the judge asked. His tone was casual, as if asking about the weather or the price of feed. "None," Aunt Margaret replied. Her voice was deferential, stripped of the command she used with Sarah. "She's quiet. Eating enough. The swelling is normal." "Good. The timing needs to be precise," the judge said. The facility in Lexington is expecting the transfer immediately after the delivery. Dr. Albright has already prepared the admission papers. Sarah stopped breathing. Her hand flew to her mouth to stifle a gasp. Facility? And the child? Margaret asked. Arranged, the judge said smoothly. A family in ideology, good stock. They taking the infant directly from the hospital. Closed adoption. Sealed records. As far as the state of Kentucky is concerned, that child never existed in relation to my son. Sarah's knees hit the floor, but she made no sound. The horror washed over her in a cold, numbing wave. They were not just hiding her. They were stealing the baby. And the girl? Margaret asked. What do I tell her when she wakes up without it? The judge laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You would not have to tell her anything, Margaret. Dr. Albright's diagnosis is severe. Paranoid schizophrenia. Postpartum psychosis. With the medication they put her on, she would not remember her own name within a month, let alone the bastard she birthed. The floor beneath Sarah seemed to dissolve. Caleb was worried. The judge continued, his voice dropping slightly. He is a sentimental boy, but he understands the necessity. He signed the consent forms this morning. He knows she is unwell. He knows this is the only way to protect the family name. He signed. The words echoed in Sarah's skull, shattering the last fragile image she held of the boy by the river. Caleb had not been bullied into this. He had not been tricked. He had signed the papers. He had agreed to lobby for her sanity, to trade her life for his clean reputation. Make sure she does not leave this house, Margaret, the judge said, the sound of a chair scraping against the floor indicating he was standing up. If she is seen, if she speaks to anyone, it unravels. And I have worked too hard to let a hardware store clerk's daughter ruin my ascent. Do not worry, Raymond, Margaret said. She's broken. She barely speaks. She thinks she is waiting for a rescue. Good. Let her wait. In 2 months, she'll be a permanent resident of St. Judith. She'll have a lifetime to wait there. The front door opened and closed. The engine of the Buick roared to life, fading into the distance. Sarah sat in the dark hallway, the truth settling into her bones like lead. There was no clinic. There was no Ohio. There was only a madhouse waiting for her. A signature from the boy she loved condemning her to oblivion, and a stranger coming to take her baby. She looked down at her stomach. The baby kicked, a strong, defiant thump against her ribs. Rage, hot and purifying, burned through the fear. They thought she was broken. They thought she was a hardware store clerk's daughter, who would fade away because powerful men told her to. Sarah stood up. The floorboard creaked, but she did not care. She waited until 3:00 a.m. The house groaned in the wind, the settling would sounding like dying breaths. Aunt Margaret slept downstairs in the parlor, her snoring rhythmic and heavy. Sarah did not pack a bag. A bag was a burden. She put on 2 pairs of socks, her sturdy canvas shoes, and the oversized coat she had arrived in. She went to the kitchen first. She found a paring knife in the drawer. Dull, rusted, but sharp enough to threaten. She slid it into her pocket. The back door was locked from the inside with a key Margaret kept on a hook by the stove. Sarah's hands did not shake this time. She moved with the cold precision of someone who had already died and had nothing left to lose. She turned the key. The tumblers clicked, a sound louder than a gunshot in the silence. She froze. Margaret's snoring hitched, then resumed. Sarah slipped out into the biting November cold. The air tasted of frost and freedom. The darkness was absolute, the moon hidden behind a shroud of winter clouds. She did not know where she was, exactly, but she knew the Buick had turned left out of the driveway. She started walking. The gravel road was brutal. Every step sent a shockwave through her swollen ankles. The cold gnawed at her face, stinging her eyes. She walked past the endless prison bars of the cornfields, now withered and dead. She walked until her feet bled inside her socks. She walked for the baby, and she walked for the girl she used to be, the naive girl who had died in that farmhouse. Car passed her once, Hours later, she threw herself into a drainage ditch, lying flat in the freezing mud, heart hammering against the earth, until the taillights disappeared. She could not trust anyone. Not here. Everyone was a potential deputy, a potential friend of the judge. Dawn was breaking when she saw the sign. Gas and go, 2 miles. She pushed her body past the point of exhaustion. When she stumbled into the fluorescent hum of the gas station, the attendant, a pimply teenager with grease under his fingernails, looked up from his comic book and dropped his soda. "Lady, are you okay? You look like you walked out of a grave." "The phone?" Sarah rasped. Her voice cracked from disuse. "I need the phone. It's a dime, but give me the phone." She screamed, a feral sound that made the boy recoil. He pointed to the rotary on the wall. Sarah dialed the only number she knew she could trust. Not her parents, they would call the police, and the police belonged to the judge. She dialed Ellie. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. "Hello?" A sleepy, confused voice. "Ellie, do not speak. Just listen," Sarah whispered, clutching the receiver so hard the plastic creaked. "I need you to get your brother's truck. I need you to drive toward Route 9, past the old mill. Am at the Texaco. Come alone. Tell no one. If you tell anyone, Ellie, they will kill me." "Sarah? Oh my God. Everyone said you were. Come. Now." She hung up. She slid down the wall, the knife heavy in her pocket. She waited. Ellie came. The rescue was not glamorous. It was a tearful, terrified hustle into a beat-up Chevy. Sarah lay on the floorboard of the back seat, covered with a blanket, while Ellie drove them across the state line into West Virginia, fueled by panic and adrenaline. They did not go home. Sarah knew she could never go home. Oak Haven was poisoned ground. 6 weeks later, in a charity hospital in Charleston where no one asked for a last name, Sarah gave birth to a daughter. She had Caleb's eyes, but Sarah vowed she would have none of his weakness. The nurse asked for the father's name for the certificate. Sarah looked at the child, wrapped in a coarse hospital blanket. She thought of the judge's black Buick. She thought of the asylum papers waiting in a desk drawer in Kentucky. She thought of Caleb, sitting in a lecture hall, safe and cowardly, believing his problem had been erased. "No father," Sarah said, her voice like steel. "'Tis mine." She named the baby Hope, not because it was pretty, but because it was an act of rebellion. She never went back. She worked double shifts in diners, cleaned motel rooms, and eventually put herself through paralegal school at night, bouncing a toddler on her knee while she studied the law, the very weapon they had tried to use against her. It was not until 20 years later that she saw Caleb again. It was on a television screen. He was running for the Senate, his hair graying at the temples, his smile practiced and charming. He spoke of family values. He spoke of integrity. Sarah sat in her living room, a glass of wine in her hand. The apartment was warm, paid for with her own money. Beside her, Hope sat working on her master's thesis. A brilliant, fierce young woman who knew exactly who she was, even if she did not know the whole story yet. The judge was dead. The secret was buried in a farmhouse that had long since collapsed. Sarah watched Caleb's face on the screen, the face of a man who thought he had gotten away with it. He thought he had erased her. He thought she was a tragedy, a footnote, a crazy girl locked away in the dark. She took a sip of wine and smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of the wolf that had chewed off its own leg to escape the trap. "You did not win," she whispered to the pixelated ghost of her past. She turned off the TV, plunging the liar into darkness. She turned to her daughter. "Hey," Sarah said, "do you want to order pizza?" Hope looked up, grinning, starving. They were alive. They were free. And that was the only revenge that mattered.